Hi, welcome to Republican Roundtable. I'm your host, Jen Zielinski, and thank you for joining us. We are deep in the 2024 election season. It is almost time to vote if you haven't voted early yet. And we have two great candidates with us, Wendi Russo and Kim Rich. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We weren't supposed to talk at the same time.
That's okay. We're here to have that chat. How are your campaigns going, Wendi? Or Kim?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay.
I think it's going awesome. I'm really enjoying meeting people at the door. It's exciting when I go there and they already recognize me or they already looked me up. I've had people tell me, I've already looked you up, I'm voting for you, I have your, I have all of your information. So it's good to know that I think people are really looking online, they're looking at websites, they're researching.
They're doing the research,
Exactly.
which is great.
You want to know that they care about what you have to say, not just the party. And I'm a big believer on you need to know what the positions are rather than the party. And my slogan is actually people over politics.
I like that. Kim, how's your campaign been going?
It's been going great too. I'm out door knocking every day, and the reactions from both sides has been very positive actually. Running on public safety and education, and nobody can really say that there's something wrong, that they don't have some importance with that. So they agree with me most of the time, and it's been going great.
As they should.
As they should.
Kim, I'll start with you. Tell us about yourself and why you're running for office. What got you here?
Well, I have lived in Edina since 1999.
Oh, wow.
And my treasurer called me up and said that he needed somebody to step up at the last minute. And so I thought some famous athlete or politician or someone from Edina would step up, but they didn't. So here I am. And I'm running on public safety, as I said, and we want to make sure that the police have all the resources they need to do their jobs. And education, we want to make sure that the budgeted money is actually getting into the classrooms, which there's a disconnect on both of those right now.
Yes, there
And
is.
I come from a business background.
Okay.
I was an insurance agent in Edina for 30 years and just recently retired from that. So I had the time, and I asked my wife if I should do it, and she said, I think you should do it.
Thought you were going to have a retirement life, and you just got right back into
Yeah,
working.
so now I'm, like Wendi said, I'm working for free now.
Wendi, tell us about yourself and what got you into where you're at today.
Well, I've lived in Eden Prairie for 20 years, and I've been a TV host over at a shopping channel in Eden Prairie.
Okay.
For 16 of those years now, I guest, so I'm part-time. I'm also a consultant, so I work with women on their interview skills. I help them to their messaging, to telling their personal stories, and help them sell themselves, because everything in life is about sales.
Yes.
And how I got involved is that I had been looking for something else since my daughter is now currently in college. She's at UW-Madison.
Congrats.
Graduated from Eden Prairie High School, and I had time on my hands. I only work 4 days a month in terms of my TV work at this point. And when I went to volunteer for the GOP, I contacted them and they said, well, you should really come to a caucus and nominate yourself as a delegate. So I did. I went. I realized how important it is to get involved at a local level, because we did do a vote, and if we didn't have 11 delegates, we wouldn't have been able to vote on that issue. And I actually recruited my neighbor, Patty. I let her, we only had 10, and I said, Patty, you need to get involved. What do I need to do? You need to be a delegate. So she decided, okay, I'll do that. So it starts with grassroots at the ground level in our local area. And then later, I was asked by Ellen Cousins, who is the chair in my district, and asked if I would run. And I said, which do you need? Do you need someone to run, or do you need to have a delegate? And so I really took this seriously. I've interviewed everyone from the city manager to 3 school board members to our Purgatory Creek chair. So I've really listened and learned about all the areas of government so that I could be dangerous. Because I think it's important to know enough to be dangerous, don't you think, Kim?
I do, I agree.
And what are you guys running on? What's your platform, Wendi?
The main 3 things, I think, is definitely safety. My husband's a part-time officer in Minneapolis with the Metro. The Metro is very undesirable. If anyone decided to take a trip on it when my husband's there, they would be able to see. There's a lot of overdosing.
Yes.
There's a lot of sexual activity on the trains. People just want to come on and sleep. I mean, it's really not something that feels safe for families to ride, or anyone really. And I'm concerned about where that's headed when we have a line that's going to be opening in 2027.
That's right.
And so that's very concerning to Eden Prairie residents. But more than that, I think it's time for us to really enforce our laws that we already have, which we're not doing. And my husband's there on the front line, and he tells me every day how incredibly busy basically the signals telling of all the crime. He said it's nonstop. So even though we're safe in our enclave of Eden Prairie, I think we need to think of the bigger issue. And the second thing is education, and the third for me is taxes and oversight on government spending, and then of course supporting small businesses. So a lot of issues.
Kim, you got into your issues a little bit before.
A little bit before, yeah. Well, it is exactly that. It's the public safety and making sure that our police have those resources. And I've talked to the Hopkins police. I did a ride along with them.
Wow.
And I asked him, I said, I'm supporting you, so what's your wish list? And he said, staffing and officers. And they're recruiting using a method called cadet. They get young people to come in, and they wean themselves in very slowly, and that's a good technique, but it will take many years to get enough officers. I know both the Hopkins department is down, and same with Edina, and they're both struggling to recruit. And I tried to talk to the St. Louis Park Police, but they were so busy, they said, you'll have to come back. And so I haven't had time to get back over there, but I'm assuming that they're so busy that they're down as well. So that's a really important thing. And then with the education piece, I'm hearing stories from parents. One young lady, her 9th grade daughter in Hopkins, has 47 students in her class.
Wow.
That's
And
insane.
3 doors down from her was a teacher that just got laid off. And then I've got a grandmother in St. Louis Park who's 9th grader. There's no teacher in the class. They're writing an assignment on the board and expecting them to get it.
And these are our public schools.
These are our public schools. And so it's mostly in the high school and in the middle school. And the grade schools, I don't think they're overcrowded as much. But anytime a young person, a student comes to the door, if I knock the door, I'm asking them, how many kids are in your class? And it's usually 30 to 40.
That's pretty high
And
still.
in those middle school and high school. So that's more than they want. And so,
what is the explanation for the budgetary problems?
well, they just passed the largest budget in history. So that's a great question. Where is the money?
The COVID funding ended for schools at the end of September.
Yeah.
So in talking to one of our board members in Eden Prairie, he did the numbers for all school districts, and he anticipates layoffs. So in Eden Prairie, we're actually a very balanced budget. We have a deficit of $600,000 as the result of legislation where we now have to pay unemployment for part-time workers.
Okay.
That means school bus drivers are now getting unemployment instead of working extra hours in the summertime. Or any other part-time employee gets full unemployment. So now the cost for bus drivers has gone up to $26 an hour. So they're having a hard time recruiting for that. So that's number one, is your school district has to pay for part-time workers for unemployment. That came from the Capitol. Your representative and my representative voted for that.
Yeah.
Another thing is they're having budgetary problems because they were relying on the COVID funding, and that's obviously something they should have thought of ahead of time. And since we had an $18 billion surplus, that money should have gone to funding our schools fully, which it did not do. That's another fault on the Democrats on their end. But in terms of also the other thing affecting you is parents pulling their kids out of school and using vouchers. And so this is what CJ is one of our board members. He's a conservative member, and he calls it circling the drain. So he said Eden Prairie is circling at the top of the drain.
Oh, wow.
But as things go down in terms of the classroom sizes get bigger, teachers get pulled, programs get cut, then you're going farther down the drain where now parents pull their kids out even more. So it's like a vicious cycle, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so you're farther down the drain, but Eden Prairie's headed down that drain.
Yeah, Hopkins used to be one of the top schools in the country, and
you would think it would be there.
There's a mass exodus with parents pulling their kids out of that district.
And where are these kids going to?
Well, a lot of the parents are taking their kids from Hopkins into Minnetonka or to Edina.
Okay.
Some of Edina has their school district in Hopkins, so it's a natural migration that way.
Yep.
And a lot of the Edina folks are taking their kids private.
And are you seeing that too, Wendy?
Well, there's definitely a pull, and they are going to private schools. That's happening. As I said, we're at the top of the circling of the drain. But there's been some behavioral issues that have been complained about by parents, that they're not happy, it's not getting solved within the schools. So I anticipate seeing a little bit more of that happening in the Eden Prairie school districts.
That's just unfortunate.
They're cutting the budget in Hopkins, I think 4.5 million.
Okay.
And I think they're cutting the budgets in Edina as well. And I think the part of the problem is there's 65 mandates that were included in the last budget, which had no funding, and they were really unnecessary. Many of them were unnecessary. So the districts have to cut their budgets in order to comply. And I don't know if that was deliberate or not. This may be a way for them to come back and now ask for more money, which I think is
that's definitely happening.
That's what they're going to do. And so anyway.
Yeah, and we see that with taxes. Moving on to another subject out of education here, taxes, surplus spending. What are we seeing at the Capitol? Wendy, I'll start with you.
Well, a lot of people at the doors are not happy about the surplus being spent. I think part of that is telling us, right, that we've been overtaxed. And so I'm a big proponent of reducing taxes. Primarily, let's start with Social Security. The DFL, they ran on that, saying that they were going to eliminate Social Security, but they did not. They only reduced it or eliminated it for a certain percentage, like you need to make 80,000 or less. There's certain caveats to it, and as a couple, but we really need to be a more tax-friendly state because people are moving out. The out-migration from Minnesota is higher than ever before. We're actually top 5 in the country. And the concern on that is if we continue to have high earners leave the state because we're not a tax-friendly state, obviously we're losing our tax base. And it puts the strain on everybody else that's still remaining in the state. So I see a lot of people moving out. They're either got their house for sale, they're planning on moving out, and especially because of the business issues, we have a paid family and medical leave that's now been basically legislated on every business regardless of size. And so that's putting a big strain on small businesses, and they're very concerned about being able to move forward and be profitable.
One of the things I've tried to remind people of is that the surplus was created by a previous administration.
And you're talking about the president.
Yes, a presidential administration. And I think that what was happening, and our governor took advantage of an opportunity with COVID, and he closed hundreds of small businesses. And then they came and basically confiscated that surplus, and they used it. They actually were promising to give it back to the voters or the taxpayers. And instead of doing that, they used it to empower their base.
Yes.
So I think that people need to be reminded that that surplus was created by a very prosperous and vibrant economy, which we will have back, hopefully.
We're working for that.
Yes.
But again, we also want to see that happening in Minnesota. And you guys are, pushing for that as well. Are there other issues that you see going on out of St. Paul at our Capitol that you want to stand for or stand against?
I think one of the key issues is we really have to be more of a business-friendly state overall. We're 44th in GDP growth in the nation, which is low. We're number 1 in corporate taxes. It's a very expensive place to do business, but on top of it, we have a very long permitting process. So it takes 656 days for a business to get proper permitting. And meanwhile, surrounding states like Wisconsin is 110 days. So there's a very big disparate difference, and we've got to reduce that time. I think one of the key things that we can do, which would be positive moving forward, is to make sure that our state is much more competitive with surrounding states for businesses to invest in Minnesota. And also, if you think about the number of companies that we currently have, they're noticing now that more companies are investing outside of Minnesota. So even our current companies are not expanding within the state. They're moving to other much more affordable cities and states.
And we have so many companies that are headquartered here with Target, Best Buy, thinking of a couple. It would be horrible if we lost them.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we do need to think a little bit further in the future. If you want to learn online, you can very easily go to the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. Not only can you see what your current representative ranks in terms of how they rank with their voting for businesses. In my district, the current representative in 49B has a 5% ranking out of 100. That tells you that her votes for businesses are always, they're negative.
Okay.
So she has negative votes. I mean, a 5%, I don't think you can get too much. You've got
No,
a very small
lower than
leeway
that.
to do
Yeah.
worse. So it's really important that you look at that to see how is your district doing and how friendly are we towards businesses.
And Kim, what
Well, I had a small business for 30
Oh,
years, you
yeah.
know, and I had a couple small businesses. Between a retail business at Dayton's where I met my wife at Southdale, but I was in the insurance business and the real estate business, and so I'm championing small businesses. This would be something that I
Absolutely.
would really want to make sure, and I think lowering taxes will bring small businesses back into our communities. And the Democrats always want to raise taxes to make up for the loss that was caused by them by raising taxes. People flee. So it's really not rocket science to figure out this. You just need to vote the right way, and hopefully our constituents will see that.
Well, the income
Yep.
tax also is really high in Minnesota. As you know,
Okay.
we're 5th in the nation
Yes.
for income tax, but here's what's even more frightening, is our lowest, so we actually have a progressive tax rate, which increases based on your income. Our lowest tax rate is actually the highest tax rate in 25 states. So if that just gives you a little bit of an understanding of how we compare, that just shows why people are moving to Tennessee or to Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Nevada even. I mean, you could go so many places, and that's where people are going. I know my neighbors moved out. They're now only part-time in Minnesota, and we're losing out on that revenue.
And we're not even getting, people not even to take home their pay. They get taken out so much from the state, and they're like, wait a second, I worked all these hours, I worked all the, these whatever, made all these sales. I can't even take home what I earned.
Yes.
That's right.
Yep. And small businesses, one thing I go back to is, hey, I haven't been to this small business since COVID. I don't even know if they're still around. It's almost
Some
just
are
a
gone.
sad
Many are gone.
situation.
There's a lot of retail space that's open, and actually the Eden
Yes.
Prairie Mall, Nancy Litwin, who runs that, she's always trying to fill spaces. She said that a lot of retailers are going to South Dakota
Okay.
because it's much more affordable and profitable to do business there. So she's having a hard time filling the spaces, and that's another thing. If you really look at our retail environment, we are not doing well in Minnesota in retail.
And you think we would, because we are where malls started. We have the Mall of America.
Exactly. Oh my goodness, that's true.
I might be incorrect here. Isn't Southdale one of the first malls?
It
or-
was the first enclosed mall
Yes.
in the United States.
Amazing.
In 1956,
Little
that
bit of
was
his-
built. And I live in a neighborhood that was right around there. I think those homes were built organically because of the need for workers at this mall. And so those neighborhoods all grew because of Southdale.
That's amazing. I never
And,
knew that.
All of the Dales, if you look back at the way Brookdale was, and that those a lot of prosperity in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, when that mall went in, and the same thing at Ridgedale. So,
I see. I grew up around Rosedale Mall, so
or Rosedale, sure, of
very
course.
interesting.
Same thing.
We didn't quite cover geography. Kim, where is your district located?
I'm 46B is Northwest Edina,
Okay.
and 2 precincts in St. Louis Park,
Mm-hmm.
the southern 2 precincts, and all of Hopkins.
Okay. So if you live in St. Louis Park, you might be voting for you. You might be in another district.
Right.
But it's good for them to check where they're at.
Yeah, so the boundary is Highway 7
Okay.
mostly, and then along the eastern side, it kind of goes back and forth across some streets, and it's a little confusing there, but mostly it's Highway 7.
Okay.
Anything south of there is 46B. Anything north of there is 46A, John Nagel.
And Wendi, I think you're his neighbor to the south with your house district.
Yes, so I'm Eden Prairie, and I'm
Okay.
49B.
Okay.
And to the north of the 5 is Stacy Bedison.
Okay.
So she's 49A.
Okay, so she's on one side, you're on the
Yes.
other side.
Yes.
Yeah, so you guys have quite the districts, the southwest corner of Hennepin County. What are you hearing from voters as you're door knocking, as you're getting out there?
I think the seniors are concerned about cost of living. Their money and their dollars are not stretched as much as they need it to be for the economy and for the inflation. The other thing I've heard is some gentlemen saying they're going to have to sell their homes because the property taxes have increased quite a bit. I know mine increased by 14% last year, and a lot of the seniors just cannot afford these large swings in property taxes. Personally, I'd like to see us cap the property tax increases specifically for seniors. But I think overall, if we want to make Eden Prairie a friendlier place, more affordable, then we really need to address the cost of living and housing. And being responsible fiscally with the money that we have, I think, is important as a state.
Yes.
One thing that the Republicans want to do is create oversight on programs so that there's not fraud occurring. I personally don't want any more taxes. I think we need a little reprieve on the taxes. Instead, if we need additional money, if we have oversight on programs and we can find fraudulent things that are happening and eliminate those, we can redirect those funds. So I think we really need oversight so we can be smart with our funds and using them in a way that makes sense for the most people.
And Kim, you kind of talked about this. What are you hearing from voters?
Well, property tax is a great
Yes.
issue. My opponent has claimed that they've lowered property taxes and that they made investments in order to do that. And I've done some research with my researchers, and we've come to the conclusion that she's referring to a one-time increase in your tax refund, your property tax credit.
Okay.
So yeah, your homestead credit. So that's a one-time thing. It's not really a tax cut. We would want to maybe cut taxes, and make it more affordable for people, and you'll increase builders. They'll want to, more people will buy houses. It'll be easier for people to get into a home. And that's, being in the real estate business. When I was in real estate, it was in the early 80s. When Jimmy Carter was in office, or actually Ronald Reagan was in office, but it was after Carter's administration, and interest rates were 16 and dropping. But, it was really very difficult to sell homes in that time because everybody was being very creative. They had a lot of negative amortization loans and stuff. It was not a good time to buy, but now is, and we want to make it even better. So,
Well, absolutely. We want everyone to be able to afford a house. It's the American dream, or part of the American dream, not only for seniors to stay in their houses, but for, I would say, our younger people and maybe middle-aged people to afford having that house.
yeah.
They've actually, so the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce did a study on the number of people migrating at what ages. The biggest out-migration is 21 to 24. And I think part of that is that you want to start your career somewhere where it's affordable,
Yes.
when you're not making as much money, and then they have an opportunity to buy a home because it's more affordable as well. So one problem that the Chamber is seeing in the future for employers is a lack of talent.
Okay.
So there's not a big pool of talent here in Minnesota like there used to be because kids are going to college, but they're not staying here. So we definitely need to continue to have that and nurture talent, young talent.
Kim, do you have anything to add on?
Well, when I took my real estate class to get licensed, I noticed that there were quite a few people in there that had no intention of getting a license. They were really there just to learn about real estate. And I thought that was, at the time I didn't really think that much about it. But after thinking about it, they wanted to know where there might be an opportunity for them to find a property that they could buy. And this would allow them that education in order to do that. And so I think that it could be a good thing to talk about teaching in high school for kids so that they would have some knowledge when they were out looking and recognize an opportunity when it's right there in front of them.
Yeah, I think real estate, knowing like basics of with an apartment and a house, something that's so important. We don't always get that, in our younger years. As we wrap up our show here, any last comments for our viewers?
Well, I just want to say that I'm really excited about the volunteers that I have. I've had so much outreach from the community and help and support. I feel like we have a great amount of signs out. I've had an incredible number of individual donors in my district, which is pretty amazing. I actually just checked the statistics. 78% of my donations are in my district, and
wow.
98% of them are in Minnesota. So I think that shows that there's a wave of support. More people, I think, believe and see that there are some issues that need to be addressed. And even the moderates that I'm meeting and the people who really may not vote Republican at the top of the ticket, they're saying that they do think Minnesota needs balance. And that's what we're hoping for, is by winning the 4 seats in the House, we'll bring back balance to Minnesota. We want to bring oversight back to some of these government-funded programs and be responsible with our tax dollars. And I think some of the mandates need to go. I think as a Republican Party, one of the things is that the paid family medical leave for small businesses, that needs to be exempted. That needs to be an option. If you want to opt into it, great, but it shouldn't be a mandate. And I think we've got to revisit a lot of mandates. So I'm hoping that we can really win those seats.
I like that. Kim, last thoughts?
I'm excited that every time I knock a door, people are encouraged to hear what I have to say. They can't disagree with, public safety and better education. And so, of course, the economy is not where they want it to be, and hopefully we can make a correction there. But I think that the outlook is really promising. And I even have my sign in some Democrat yards because they've decided they're going to split their ticket. And so I think that's very encouraging. I did speak with one gentleman who was a teacher at the university, and he said that he was an independent. And I said, well, as a true independent, there's no way you would ever want a trifecta. And he agreed with me 100%. He said, you are right. That's absolute. So,
how can viewers get a hold of you?
You can go to my website at www.russo4mn.com and reach me there, and you can ask me any question you want.
Perfect. And Kim.
And Kim Rich at kimrich4mn.org
Perfect.
is my website.
Thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Republican Roundtable. Until next time.